I knew something was wrong the moment I pulled into my driveway and saw the garage door standing wide open on that freezing January morning in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The temperature was hovering around 15 degrees, and my breath formed thick clouds in the air as I sat there in my truck, staring at that gaping entrance. I had left for work at 6 in the morning, and I was absolutely certain I had closed that door. My wife Rachel was visiting her sister in Minnesota for the week, so nobody should have been near our house at all. My name is Zachary Vaughn, and I had lived in the Meadowbrook Estates subdivision for about 3 years. It was one of those neighborhoods where every house looked vaguely similar, with perfectly manicured lawns and strict homeowner association rules about everything from mailbox colors to the height of your grass. I had dealt with my share of HOA nonsense over the years, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. I killed the engine and stepped out of my truck, the cold immediately biting through my work jacket. I approached the garage cautiously, half expecting to find someone still inside. The interior was exactly as I had left it that morning, with one glaring exception. The spot where my brand new Ariens Deluxe Snowblower had been sitting was completely empty. Just a faint outline in the thin layer of snow that had blown in through the open door remained as evidence that anything had ever been there. My heart started pounding. That snowblower had cost me $2,000, and I had only bought it 6 weeks ago when the first major snowstorm of the season had been predicted. With the endless Iowa winters, it was practically a necessity, especially since our driveway was nearly 100 feet long. I pulled out my phone and started to dial 911, but then I remembered something that made me pause. 3 months ago, after a string of package thefts in the neighborhood, I had installed a complete security camera system. I had cameras covering every angle of my property, including 2 high-definition cameras in the garage itself. My hands were shaking, and not just from the cold, as I pulled up the app on my phone. I rewound the footage to that morning, starting from when I had left for work. The timestamp showed 6:47 a.m. when things got interesting. A silver Lexus SUV pulled up to my house and parked on the street. I watched as a woman got out, looking around nervously before walking straight up my driveway. She was middle-aged, probably in her late 40s, with that distinctive haircut that seemed to be the uniform of a certain type of suburban woman. The camera quality was excellent, and I could see her face clearly. She was wearing expensive-looking athletic wear and had a large designer purse slung over her shoulder. What happened next made my blood boil. This woman walked right up to my garage, pulled out what looked like a universal garage door opener from her purse, and pointed it at my door. After a few attempts with different codes, my garage door began to rise. She smiled, actually smiled as if she had just accomplished something clever. Then she walked inside like she owned the place, grabbed my snowblower, and wheeled it right out to her vehicle. The footage showed her struggling a bit with the weight as she lifted it into her cargo area, but she managed. The whole thing took less than 10 minutes. The best part, if you could call it that, was when she backed up to turn around. She had to do a 3-point turn because of how the street curved, and during that maneuver, her license plate was perfectly visible to my driveway camera for several seconds. Iowa plate number HTR 4892. Crystal clear. I screenshot the image and saved it immediately. Now I did call 911. The dispatcher was professional and told me an officer would be out within the hour. While I waited, I went through more of the footage, trying to see if I recognized this woman. There was something familiar about her, but I could not quite place it. I paced back and forth in my driveway, my anger building with each passing minute. Who just steals a snowblower in broad daylight from someone's garage? What kind of person does that? Officer Martinez arrived about 45 minutes later. He was a younger guy, probably in his early 30s, with a no-nonsense demeanor that I appreciated. I showed him the garage, explained what had happened, and then pulled up the footage on my phone. His eyebrows rose as he watched the video play out. "Well, that is about the clearest theft I have ever seen documented," he said, making notes in his report. "You got her face, her vehicle, and her license plate. This should be pretty straightforward. Mind if I get a copy of that footage?" "I can email it to you right now," I said, already pulling up my email. "Do you recognize her? She seemed to know exactly what she was doing with that garage door opener." Officer Martinez studied the frozen frame on my phone, zooming in on the woman's face. "I do not recognize her personally, but let me run this plate. Give me a minute." He walked back to his patrol car and I stood there in the cold, watching him work on his computer. The whole situation felt surreal. I kept replaying the video in my mind, watching this stranger violate my property so casually. After about 10 minutes, Officer Martinez got out of his car with a strange expression on his face. "The vehicle is registered to a Brenda Hartwell," he said. "Address is 2847 Meadowbrook Lane." "That is actually in this same subdivision, right?" The name hit me like a truck. Brenda Hartwell. Of course I knew who she was. She was the vice president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA board. I had seen her at exactly one HOA meeting, about 2 years ago, when she had spent 30 minutes berating a neighbor for having the wrong shade of beige on their house trim. She was notorious in the neighborhood for being absolutely ruthless about HOA violations. People called her Brenda the Terrible behind her back, though I had heard worse nicknames than that. "I know exactly who she is," I said, feeling a mix of shock and vindication. "She is on the HOA board. She lives about 4 streets over from me." Officer Martinez's expression darkened. "Well, that explains the universal garage opener. HOA board members sometimes have access to those for emergency purposes, though this definitely was not an emergency. Let me call this in and we will head over to her address. Would you like to follow me over there?" "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. I locked up my garage and got back in my truck, following the patrol car through the winding streets of Meadowbrook Estates. The neighborhood looked picture-perfect in the winter morning light, with snow-covered lawns and tasteful holiday decorations that had not quite been taken down yet. I had always found it a bit sterile, a bit too controlled, but Rachel had loved the idea of living somewhere with standards. Now those standards seemed meaningless when the people enforcing them were criminals. Brenda Hartwell's house was exactly what I expected. It was one of the larger models in the neighborhood, a 2-story colonial with professional landscaping and a 3-car garage. Everything about it screamed that the owners had money and wanted everyone to know it. Officer Martinez pulled into the driveway and I parked on the street, not wanting to complicate things. We walked up to the front door together, and Officer Martinez rang the doorbell. I could hear it chiming inside, some pretentious melody that probably cost extra. After a moment, the door opened and there she was. Brenda Hartwell in person, wearing the same athletic outfit I had seen in the video. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession when she saw us: confusion, recognition, and then poorly concealed panic. "Can I help you, officer?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Madam, I am Officer Martinez with the Cedar Rapids Police Department. This is Zachary Vaughn. We need to speak with you about a theft that occurred this morning. May we come in?" Brenda's eyes flicked to me and I saw her calculating. "A theft? I do not know anything about any theft. What is this about?" "Madam, We have video evidence showing you entering Mr. Vaughn's garage without permission this morning at approximately 6:47 a.m. and removing a snowblower from the premises. We also have clear footage of your vehicle and license plate. I need you to tell me where that snowblower is right now." The color drained from Brenda's face. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then seemed to gather herself. "I have no idea what you are talking about. I have been home all morning. There must be some mistake." "There is no mistake," I said, unable to keep quiet any longer. "I have you on camera, Brenda. Your face, your car, everything. You used what I am guessing is an HOA master garage opener to break into my garage and steal my property. How dare you accuse me of such a thing?" Brenda's voice rose, taking on that shrill quality I remembered from the HOA meeting. "I am a respected member of this community. I am on the HOA board. I would never do something so beneath me." Officer Martinez held up a hand. "Madam, I am going to need to see inside your garage. We can do this the easy way with your cooperation, or I can get a warrant." "Your choice, but I strongly suggest you cooperate." Brenda stood there, her jaw clenched, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she stepped aside. "Fine, but this is harassment and I will be calling my lawyer." "That is your right," Officer Martinez said calmly, stepping inside. I followed, looking around at the interior of her home. It was showroom perfect, with expensive furniture and art on the walls. Everything was coordinated and spotless. We walked through the house to the garage entrance, and Brenda opened the door with obvious reluctance. There, sitting in the middle of her 3-car garage between a Lexus sedan and the silver SUV from the video, was my snowblower. The bright orange and black Arians was unmistakable. I had even put a custom sticker on it with my initials, and I could see it from where I stood. "That is my snowblower," I said, pointing. "Right there. You can see my initials on the side." Officer Martinez walked over and examined it, taking photos with his phone. "Madam, can you explain how Mr. Vaughn's snowblower ended up in your garage?" Brenda's face had gone from pale to red. "That is not his snowblower. That is mine. I bought it last week." "Really?" I said, my anger flaring. "Then why does it have my initials on it? ZV. Zachary Vaughn." She glanced at the sticker and I could see her mind racing. "That must have been there when I bought it. I got it secondhand." "From where?" Officer Martinez asked. "I do not remember. Some online marketplace. The receipt is around here somewhere." "Madam, I am going to need to see that receipt. But I should tell you that lying to a police officer during an investigation is a crime in itself. Mr. Vaughn has the original purchase receipt for this snowblower, and he has video evidence of you taking it from his garage this morning. I strongly advise you to be truthful." The silence that followed was heavy. I watched Brenda's face as the reality of her situation sank in. She had been caught red-handed and there was no way out. Her shoulders slumped slightly, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost its aggressive edge. "Fine," she said quietly. "I took it, but I had a good reason." "There is no good reason for theft," Officer Martinez said. "But I am listening." Brenda looked at me with what I could only describe as entitled indignation. "Your snowblower has been too loud. Every time you use it early in the morning, it wakes me up. I left you 3 notices about it, and you ignored every single one. The HOA bylaws clearly state that no lawn equipment or similar machinery can be operated before 8 a.m. on weekdays or 9 a.m. on weekends. You have been in violation for weeks." I stared at her in disbelief. "I never received any notices, not one, and I have been using the snowblower at reasonable times. The last time I used it was at 7:30 in the morning after an overnight snowstorm. I needed to clear my driveway to get to work." "That is still before 8 a.m., she said triumphantly. "You were in violation. So your solution was to steal my property." I could not believe what I was hearing. You are on the HOA board. There are procedures for violations. You do not just break into someone's garage and take their stuff. I was confiscating contraband, Brenda said, as if this made perfect sense. The HOA has the right to remove items that are being used in violation of the bylaws. Officer Martinez shook his head. Madam, that is not how the law works. The HOA has no legal authority to enter someone's property without permission and remove their belongings. What you did is called theft, and it is a crime. I am going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. You are arresting me. Brenda's voice went up an octave. This is absurd. I am a pillar of this community. I volunteer at the library. I organize the neighborhood watch. You cannot arrest me for enforcing HOA rules. I am arresting you for theft, Officer Martinez said firmly. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As he continued reading her rights and placed the handcuffs on her wrists, Brenda started crying. Not quiet tears, but loud, gasping sobs that seemed designed for maximum sympathy. This is not fair. I was just trying to maintain property values. He was the one breaking the rules. A man appeared from deeper in the house, tall and thin with graying hair. Brenda, what is going on? Why are there police here? His eyes widened when he saw the handcuffs. Mr. Hartwell, Officer Martinez asked, your wife has been arrested for theft. She broke into this gentleman's garage this morning and stole his snowblower. If you want to contact a lawyer, now would be a good time. The man, who I assumed was Brenda's husband, looked absolutely shell-shocked. He stared at the snowblower, then at me, then at his wife. Brenda, what did you do? I was enforcing the HOA bylaws, she wailed. He kept using that thing before 8 a.m., I warned him. Her husband's face went through several expressions before settling on something between anger and despair. We talked about this. I told you that you could not just take people's things. I told you that you were taking this HOA stuff too far. Don't you dare take his side, Brenda snapped, her tears stopping abruptly. I have dedicated myself to keeping this neighborhood pristine, and no one appreciates it. Not you, not the other board members, and certainly not rule breakers like him. Officer Martinez guided her toward the front door. Mr. Vaughn, you are welcome to take your snowblower now. I will need you to come down to the station later to give a formal statement and provide copies of all your video footage. Here is my card. I took the card and nodded. Thank you, officer. I will be there this afternoon. As they left, I could hear Brenda still protesting loudly about HOA bylaws and property values. Her husband stood in the garage, looking at me with an expression of profound embarrassment. I am sorry, he said quietly. I had no idea she was going to do something like this. She has been obsessed with the HOA for the past year. It has gotten worse and worse. I should have done something sooner. Well, she is definitely in trouble now, I said, walking over to my snowblower. Did you know she had a universal garage door opener? He nodded miserably. All the board members have them. They are supposed to be for emergencies only, like if someone's garage door gets stuck open during a storm and they are not home. I never thought she would use it to break into someone's garage. Is this the first time she has done something like this? He hesitated, and I could see him wrestling with how much to say. I do not know for sure, but there have been other incidents. Small things going missing from yards, decorations, lawn ornaments. People assumed it was kids or random thieves. Now I am wondering. This was getting more interesting by the minute. You might want to mention that to the police, I suggested. If she has been stealing other things, people deserve to know. Yeah, he said, rubbing his face with both hands. Yeah, I will. Listen, for what it is worth, I really am sorry. I will make sure you are compensated for any damages or trouble this causes." I appreciated the gesture, but I was still angry. "I appreciate that, but your wife committed a crime. She needs to face the consequences." "I know," he said quietly. "Believe me, I know." I loaded my snowblower into the back of my truck with some effort. It was heavy, but I managed. As I drove home, my mind was racing. Part of me felt vindicated that Brenda had been caught so easily, but another part of me was already worrying about the fallout. She was on the HOA board, and she had clearly demonstrated that she was vindictive and irrational. Even from jail, she could make my life difficult. When I got home, I immediately called Rachel. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear her sister's kids in the background. "Hey, honey," she said cheerfully. "How is everything?" "You are not going to believe what happened today," I said, and proceeded to tell her the entire story. Her reactions ranged from shock to anger to something like amusement as I described Brenda's arrest. "She actually thought she could get away with that," Rachel said. "That is insane. What kind of person does that?" "Someone who has been drunk on HOA power for too long," I said. "Apparently her husband said she has been getting worse. I am wondering if she has stolen other stuff too." "Well, at least you got your snowblower back. Are you going to press charges?" "Absolutely," I said firmly. "She broke into our garage, Rachel. What if she had done something worse? What if she had gone into the house? This is serious." "I agree," Rachel said. "Do what you need to do. I will be home in a couple days, and we can figure out what to do about the HOA situation together. They are probably going to need a new board member after this." After we hung up, I went down to the police station as promised. Officer Martinez took my full statement, and I provided him with copies of all my security footage on a USB drive. While I was there, I asked if there had been any developments. "She made bail a couple hours ago," he told me, "but she is being charged with burglary and theft. Those are serious charges. Her lawyer is already trying to work out a plea deal from what I hear." "That was fast," I said. "Her husband is apparently very motivated to make this go away quickly and quietly," Officer Martinez explained. "Between you and me, I think he is worried about what else might come out if this drags on. We are going to be looking into those other missing items he mentioned." Over the next few days, the story spread through Meadowbrook Estates like wildfire. I had neighbors I had never spoken to before stopping by to ask if it was true that Brenda Hartwell had been arrested for stealing my snowblower. Some of them seemed shocked, but a surprising number seemed almost relieved, as if they had been waiting for someone to finally stand up to her. One neighbor, an older woman named Patricia who lived 2 streets over, came by with information that made the whole thing even more interesting. She knocked on my door on a Saturday morning holding a manila folder. "Mr. Vaughn, I am Patricia Morrison. I live on Elm Drive. Do you have a few minutes?" I invited her in, curious about what she wanted. She sat down at my kitchen table and opened the folder, which contained several printed photos. "I heard about what happened with Brenda Hartwell," she said, "and it got me thinking. Last summer, I had a very nice garden gnome disappear from my front yard. It was not valuable, but it had sentimental value. My late husband gave it to me. I have a doorbell camera, and I went back and checked the footage from around that time." She pulled out a photo and slid it across the table. It showed Brenda Hartwell, clear as day, walking up to Patricia's front yard and picking up a garden gnome. The timestamp showed it was from July of the previous year. "I never did anything about it because I was not entirely sure it was her, and I did not want to cause trouble with the HOA board," Patricia continued. "But now, seeing that she actually broke into your garage, I think she needs to be stopped. I have more footage if the police want it." "You should definitely take this to Officer Martinez," I said, writing down his contact information for her. If she has been doing this to other people, they all deserve justice. Patricia left, and within hours, I started getting calls and visits from other neighbors with similar stories. A decorative mailbox topper had vanished. Solar garden lights had disappeared. Someone's welcome mat had been replaced with a plain one. In every case, people had assumed it was random theft or that they had misplaced items. But as we compared notes and security footage, a pattern emerged. Brenda Hartwell had been on a one-woman crusade to enforce her vision of neighborhood perfection, and she had been stealing anything she deemed inappropriate or in violation of HOA aesthetics. By Monday, the police had collected evidence of at least 15 separate thefts committed by Brenda over the past 18 months. The charges against her were mounting, and the story had even made the local news. The Cedar Rapids Gazette ran an article with the headline "HOA board member arrested in string of neighborhood thefts." Brenda's mugshot was plastered on their website, and the comments section was brutal. The HOA called an emergency meeting for that Wednesday evening. The email announcement said it was to address recent events and to discuss the future composition of the board. I decided to attend, curious to see how they would handle the situation. Rachel had come home by then, and she came with me for moral support. The meeting was held at the community center, a small building near the neighborhood entrance that was used for various events. When we arrived, the parking lot was packed. It seemed like everyone in Meadowbrook Estates had turned out to see what would happen. The main room was set up with rows of folding chairs facing a table where the board members usually sat. Tonight, there were only 3 people at that table instead of the usual 5. Brenda was obviously absent, and apparently the HOA president, a man named Douglas Chen, had resigned that afternoon. The acting president was now Miriam Peterson, a woman in her 60s who had always seemed relatively reasonable. She looked stressed as she called the meeting to order. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Miriam began. "I know we are all aware of the situation with Brenda Hartwell. The board has been in consultation with our lawyer, and I want to address several points. First, Brenda Hartwell has been removed from the HOA board effective immediately. Her actions were criminal and in no way represent the values or procedures of this organization." There was scattered applause, which Miriam acknowledged with a tight nod before continuing. "Second, we have conducted an audit of all HOA property and equipment. The universal garage door openers that were issued to board members for emergency use only have been collected and will be destroyed. We are implementing new protocols for any future emergency access situations that will require multiple board members and proper documentation." "What about all the stuff she stole?" someone called out from the audience. "I want my garden gnome back," Miriam sighed. "We are working with the police to identify and return all stolen property. If you believe Brenda took something from your property, please file a report with the police and notify the HOA office. We will do everything we can to facilitate returns." The meeting continued for over an hour, with various neighbors voicing their concerns and frustrations. Some people wanted the entire board to resign. Others wanted a complete overhaul of the HOA bylaws. A few people even suggested dissolving the HOA entirely, though that was apparently not legally feasible given how the neighborhood was structured. I raised my hand and was recognized. "I just want to say that while I appreciate the board taking action, I think we need to seriously examine how someone like Brenda Hartwell was able to get into a position of power and abuse it for so long. Were there no checks on her behavior? Did no one question what she was doing?" Miriam looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Vaughn, I will be honest with you. Brenda was very good at presenting her actions as zealous enforcement of bylaws. She would claim she was just being thorough, just maintaining standards. By the time some of us realized she had gone too far, she had been operating this way for months. We failed in our oversight, and for that, I apologize to you and everyone else she victimized. What about the notices she claimed to have sent me? I pressed. She told the police she had left me 3 notices about my snowblower noise. I never received anything. We checked our records, Miriam said. There were no notices filed with the HOA office. If Brenda did issue them, she did so without proper authorization or documentation, which itself would be a violation of our procedures. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to me to shake my hand and thank me for standing up to Brenda. One man, who introduced himself as Marcus Webb, told me that Brenda had been trying to fine him for having the wrong shade of gray on his shutters for 6 months. She would drive by my house every week and take photos, he said. She claimed my shutters were charcoal when they should have been slate. I had them color matched to the approved palette, but she insisted they were wrong. Now I am wondering if she was just harassing me for some other reason. Sounds like she was on a power trip, Rachel said. I am just glad Zachary had those cameras, or she might have gotten away with it indefinitely. A lot of people are installing security cameras now, Marcus said. Everyone is paranoid about what else might have been happening that we did not catch. The criminal case against Brenda Hartwell moved forward quickly. Her lawyer did manage to work out a plea deal, but it was not as favorable as she probably hoped. In early March, about 6 weeks after her arrest, she pleaded guilty to 1 count of burglary in the 2nd degree and multiple counts of theft. The prosecutor was a stern woman named Jennifer Torres, who made it clear that she took property crimes seriously, especially when they were committed by someone in a position of community trust. I attended the sentencing hearing, which was held on a cold Thursday morning at the Lynn County Courthouse. The courtroom was surprisingly full, with many of my neighbors in attendance. Brenda sat at the defense table with her lawyer, wearing a conservative dress and looking nothing like the aggressive woman I had seen on my security footage. She kept her eyes down, refusing to look at anyone. The judge, an older man named Judge Harold Simmons, reviewed the case file before addressing the court. "This is an unusual case," he began. "Mrs. Hartwell, you have no prior criminal record. By all accounts, you have been an active member of your community. However, what you did was serious. You did not just steal property. You violated the fundamental sense of security that people have in their own homes. You used a position of trust to gain access to private property. That is a betrayal that goes beyond simple theft." Brenda's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client deeply regrets her actions. She has been under significant stress and allowed her desire to maintain neighborhood standards to override her judgment. She is willing to make full restitution to all victims and has already begun therapy to address the underlying issues that led to this behavior." "Mrs. Hartwell, do you have anything to say?" the judge asked. Brenda stood slowly, her hands trembling. "Your Honor, I am deeply sorry for what I did. I let my passion for our community blind me to what was right and wrong. I thought I was helping, but I see now that I was just hurting people. I am especially sorry to Mr. Vaughn and all the other neighbors whose trust I violated. I will do whatever it takes to make this right." I felt no satisfaction hearing her apology. It sounded rehearsed, and I doubted she truly understood what she had done wrong. She still seemed to think she had just been too enthusiastic rather than genuinely criminal. Judge Simmons was apparently thinking along the same lines. "Mrs. Hartwell, I appreciate your apology, but I am not convinced you fully grasp the severity of your actions. Breaking into someone's garage is not a minor oversight. Conducting a campaign of theft against your neighbors over 18 months is not excessive enthusiasm. It is criminal behavior. He paused, reviewing some papers in front of him. However, I also acknowledge that you have no prior record and that you are taking steps toward rehabilitation. Therefore, I am sentencing you to 2 years in prison, with all but 90 days suspended. You will serve 90 days in county jail, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. During your probation, you are prohibited from serving in any HOA board or similar community organization. You will complete 200 hours of community service and continue therapy. You will also pay full restitution to all victims, including Mr. Vaughn for his time and legal expenses. Brenda started crying again, and her husband, who was sitting in the gallery, put his head in his hands. 90 days in jail was not much considering what she had done, but it was something. The ban on HOA involvement was particularly fitting, and I felt a measure of justice had been served. After the hearing, I spoke briefly with Jennifer Torres, the prosecutor. "Thank you for taking this seriously," I told her. "I know it was just a snowblower, but it felt like a violation." "It was a violation," she said firmly. "And it was not just a snowblower. It was a pattern of behavior that made people feel unsafe in their own neighborhood. You did the right thing by pursuing charges. Too many people would have just let it go." Over the following months, life in Meadowbrook Estates slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. The HOA elected a new board with stricter oversight procedures and term limits. Miriam Peterson agreed to stay on for 1 more year to help with the transition, but she made it clear she wanted younger people with fresh perspectives to take over. Brenda served her 90 days in county jail and was released in early June. I saw her husband putting a "for sale" sign in their yard about a week after she got out. I could not say I was surprised. The shame of what had happened had to be overwhelming, and starting fresh somewhere else probably seemed like the only option. They moved out by the end of July, and a young couple with twins bought the house. As for me, I kept my security cameras and actually upgraded them to an even better system. The whole experience had taught me that you never really know what your neighbors might be capable of, and documentation can make all the difference. My snowblower was undamaged, and I used it frequently the following winter, always being careful to operate it after 8 a.m. on weekdays, not because I had to, but because it seemed like a reasonable courtesy. Rachel and I talked about moving after everything that happened, but ultimately we decided to stay. We had made some good friends in the neighborhood, and the problems had been with one person, not the community as a whole. If anything, the whole ordeal had brought many of us closer together. We had a neighborhood barbecue that summer, and it was genuinely pleasant to be around people who were not obsessing over paint colors and lawn height. One evening in late August, I was sitting on my back deck with Rachel, enjoying the warm weather and grilling some burgers. My phone rang and I saw it was Officer Martinez. "Mr. Vaughn, I hope I am not bothering you. I wanted to follow up on the Hartwell case now that everything is wrapped up." "Not a bothering me at all," I said. "What is going on?" "I wanted you to know that we recovered a total of 47 items from Brenda Hartwell's property after we executed a more thorough search warrant. She had been storing things in her basement: garden decorations, welcome mats, even some tools from people's garages. It turns out your snowblower was not the first garage she had broken into, just the first time she got caught on camera." I shook my head in disbelief. "That is insane. How did she think she would get away with all that?" "People who do things like this often have a kind of twisted logic," Officer Martinez explained. She genuinely believed she was improving the neighborhood by removing items she deemed inappropriate. In her mind, she was the hero. It took getting arrested and going through the legal process for her to start to see reality. "You think she really gets it now?" I asked. "Hard to say," he admitted. "Some people change, some do not, but at least she cannot hurt anyone else in your neighborhood now." That ban on HOA service was a nice touch by the judge. After we hung up, I told Rachel what Officer Martinez had said. She shook her head in amazement. 47 items. That is almost one per week for a year. How did nobody notice sooner? People did notice, I said. They just did not connect the dots. Everyone thought they were isolated incidents. It took one big, obvious theft caught on camera to make everyone realize there was a pattern. "Well, I am glad it is over," Rachel said, raising her beer bottle in a toast. "Here is to boring, drama-free neighborhood living from now on." "I will drink to that," I said, clinking my bottle against hers. The rest of that year passed without incident. The new HOA board was reasonable and focused on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. They organized a neighborhood watch program, but one focused on real safety concerns rather than bylaw violations. They fixed the entrance sign that had been falling apart and organized quarterly social events that people actually wanted to attend. I ran into Patricia Morrison, the woman with the stolen garden gnome, at the grocery store one day in October. She told me that the police had recovered her gnome from Brenda's basement, and it was back in her front yard where it belonged. "I know it is silly to care so much about a garden gnome," she said, "but it really meant something to me. Thank you for having the courage to press charges. If you had not, she would still be out there doing this to people." "I am just glad I had cameras," I said. "Otherwise it would have been my word against hers, and she probably would have won." "A lot of people have cameras now," Patricia said. "Silver lining, I suppose. The neighborhood is probably the most secure it has ever been." That winter was particularly harsh, with multiple major snowstorms rolling through Iowa. My snowblower got a serious workout, and I was grateful to have it back. Every time I used it, I thought about how close I had come to never seeing it again if not for my security system. It was a reminder that sometimes the best defense against unreasonable people is simple documentation. The following spring, Rachel and I were working in our front yard, planting some new flowers when a car pulled up. A woman I did not recognize got out and walked over to us. "Are you Zachary Vaughn?" she asked. "I am," I said cautiously, wondering if this was about to be another strange HOA situation. "My name is Lisa Park. I am a reporter with KCRG TV9. I am working on a story about HOA overreach and abuse of power. Your case with Brenda Hartwell has become kind of famous in property law circles. Would you be willing to do an interview?" I glanced at Rachel, who shrugged. "I guess so," I said. "What do you want to know?" We did the interview in my driveway, with Lisa asking me detailed questions about what had happened and how the security cameras had made all the difference. She was particularly interested in the broader implications for HOA governance and accountability. "Your case has actually inspired some proposed legislation," she told me. "There is a bill being considered in the state legislature that would create stricter oversight requirements for HOAs and clear penalties for board members who abuse their authority. They are calling it the Homeowner Protection Act." "Really?" I was surprised. I had no idea this had gotten that much attention. "Property rights are a big deal in Iowa," Lisa said, "and people are tired of HOA horror stories. Your case was particularly egregious because it involved actual theft, but there are hundreds of stories of HOAs overstepping their bounds. Hopefully, this will lead to some meaningful reforms." The story aired a few weeks later, and I got calls from several other reporters wanting to follow up. I agreed to a few more interviews, figuring that if my experience could help create better protections for homeowners, it was worth the time. Rachel was less enthusiastic about the attention, but she understood why I felt it was important. The proposed legislation did pass later that year, though in a somewhat watered-down form. It created a state ombudsman office to handle HOA complaints and required HOAs to carry specific liability insurance. It also mandated annual audits for HOAs above a certain size and created a registry of board members with disciplinary actions. It was not perfect, but it was a step in the right direction. As for Brenda Hartwell, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she and her husband had moved to Arizona and were trying to start over. Her probation had been transferred to that state, and apparently she was working at a retail store and keeping her head down. I felt no need to keep tabs on her beyond that. She had faced consequences for her actions, and what she did with the rest of her life was her business. The whole experience taught me several important lessons. First, that security cameras are worth their weight in gold. Without that footage, I would never have been able to prove what Brenda had done, and she would have continued victimizing people. Second, that positions of minor authority can attract people with control issues, and communities need robust oversight to prevent abuse. And third, that standing up for yourself matters, even when it would be easier to just let things go. 2 years after the theft, Rachel and I were still living in Meadowbrook Estates. The neighborhood had genuinely improved, with a more balanced approach to community standards, and a board that focused on bringing people together rather than tearing them down. We had become friends with several of our neighbors, including Marcus Webb, who had been dealing with the shutter color harassment. On a Saturday afternoon in early December, I was out front, using my trusty snowblower to clear the driveway after a fresh snowfall. It was 10 a.m., well within any reasonable noise restriction, and I was taking my time, making sure to get all the snow pushed to the edges. Marcus walked by with his dog and waved. "That thing's still running strong," he called out. Like a champion, I called back. "Best $2,000 I ever spent, even if it did lead to the craziest few months of my life." "You should write a book about it," Marcus joked. "HOA horror stories. It would be a bestseller." "I think I will stick to just living my life," I said, "but maybe someday." As Marcus continued his walk and I finished clearing the driveway, I felt a sense of contentment. The ordeal with Brenda had been stressful and infuriating, but it had also shown me that justice was possible when you stood up for yourself and had the evidence to back up your claims. It had brought positive changes to our community, and maybe even helped other homeowners across the state. I put the snowblower back in the garage, making sure the door was firmly closed and locked. Then I went inside, where Rachel had hot coffee waiting and the house was warm and comfortable. It was a simple, perfect moment, and I was grateful for it. No HOA drama, no theft, no conflict. Just peace and normalcy, which after everything we had been through felt like the greatest luxury of all. That evening, I got an email from the new HOA board president, a friendly guy named Tom who worked as an accountant. It was the monthly newsletter, full of upcoming events and reminders about things like holiday decoration takedown dates. But it was written in a reasonable, friendly tone, with reminders that these were guidelines designed to keep the neighborhood looking nice, not rigid rules to be enforced with an iron fist. It was a stark contrast to the aggressive, punitive emails that Brenda used to send out. I showed it to Rachel, who read it and smiled. "See, it is possible to have an HOA that actually serves the community instead of tyrannizing it. Who would have thought?" I said. All it took was one board member getting arrested for theft. Not the usual path to reform, Rachel agreed, but effective. We spent the rest of that evening decorating our Christmas tree and watching holiday movies, far removed from the drama of 2 years earlier. Every now and then, I would glance at the monitor for my security cameras, which I kept on a shelf in the living room. The feeds showed our property, peaceful and undisturbed. No unauthorized vehicles, no one creeping around, just our home safe and secure. The doorbell rang around 8 p.m., startling us both. I checked the camera feed and saw Patricia Morrison standing on our front porch, holding what looked like a plate covered in foil. I opened the door, letting in a blast of cold air. "Patricia, hi, come in out of the cold." "I cannot stay," she said, handing me the plate. "I just wanted to drop off some cookies. I have been baking all day and thought you and Rachel might enjoy some." "That is very kind of you," I said, touched by the gesture. "Would you like to come in for a minute and warm up?" "Well, maybe just for a minute," she agreed, stepping inside. Rachel came over, and the three of us chatted for a bit. Patricia told us about her grandchildren visiting for the holidays and about the new book club that had started in the neighborhood. It was pleasant small talk, the kind of interaction that makes a neighborhood feel like a community. As Patricia was leaving, she paused at the door. "You know, I have been thinking about what happened with Brenda a lot lately. It is strange how one person can affect so many lives. But I think in a weird way, she brought us all closer together. We all watch out for each other now. We actually talk to each other. Before, everyone was just isolated in their own houses, worried about HOA violations. Now it feels like we are actually neighbors." "That is a good point," Rachel said. "I had not thought about it that way, but you are right. We know more people now than we did before all of this happened." After Patricia left, Rachel and I tried some of the cookies. They were excellent, with chocolate chips and walnuts. We sat on the couch, enjoying the treats and the warmth of our home. "Do you ever wonder what Brenda is doing right now?" Rachel asked suddenly. I thought about it for a moment. "Not really. I hope she has learned something and is living a better life, but it is not my concern anymore. She made her choices and she paid for them. What matters is that she cannot hurt anyone else here." "Fair enough," Rachel said. "I just hope she actually did learn something. It would be sad if she just moved somewhere else and started doing the same things." "If she does, hopefully someone there has security cameras too," I said, which made Rachel laugh. The holidays passed peacefully, and we welcomed the new year without incident. In February, I got a letter from the county attorney's office informing me that Brenda Hartwell had completed her probation requirements, and that the case was officially closed. It felt like the final chapter of a long, strange story. I filed the letter away and went about my day. That evening, I was in the garage, doing some routine maintenance on the snowblower, when I realized that I no longer felt angry about what had happened. The intense fury I had felt that morning when I discovered it was stolen had faded into something more like bemused disbelief. It had become a story I told at parties, the time my HOA board member stole my snowblower and got arrested for it. Rachel came out to the garage carrying 2 beers. She handed me one and leaned against my workbench. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just how weird life is," I said. 2 years ago, I never would have imagined any of this happening. Now it is just part of our history. The time we dealt with an insane HOA board member. "Do you regret pressing charges?" Rachel asked. "Some people thought you should have just taken the snowblower back and let it go." "Not for a second," I said firmly. "She needed to face consequences. If I had let it go, she would have kept doing it to other people. Sometimes you have to stand up, even when it is uncomfortable." "I am proud of you for that," Rachel said, clinking her beer bottle against mine. Not everyone would have followed through. We stood there in the garage for a while, just enjoying each other's company. The snowblower sat there, clean and well-maintained, ready for the next storm. It was just a machine, a tool for clearing snow, but it had become symbolic of something larger. It represented standing up for yourself, demanding accountability, and refusing to be a victim. The following month, I was invited to speak at a local homeowners' rights group meeting. They wanted me to share my experience and talk about the importance of documentation and security. I was nervous about public speaking, but I agreed because I believed in the message. The meeting was held at a community center in Marion, a suburb just north of Cedar Rapids. About 50 people attended, all of them dealing with various HOA issues. Some were minor disputes about lawn height or paint colors. Others were more serious, involving fines, liens, and legal threats. I told my story from beginning to end, showing photos and video clips when relevant. The audience was engaged, asking questions and sharing their own experiences. One woman was dealing with an HOA that was trying to fine her because her roses were the wrong shade of pink. A man was being threatened with a lien because his mailbox post was 3 inches too short according to the bylaws. The key thing, I told them, is documentation. Get everything in writing. Install cameras if you can afford them. Save all emails, letters, and notices. If you have to go to court or file a police report, you need evidence. My case was easy to prove because I had clear video footage. Without that, it would have been much harder. After my presentation, several people came up to thank me and ask for more specific advice. I gave out Officer Martinez's contact information to a few people who seemed to be dealing with potential criminal behavior from their HOA boards. One man told me he had been dealing with harassment from his HOA president for over a year and had finally decided to fight back. "Your story gave me courage," he said. "I thought I was alone in dealing with this kind of crazy behavior. It helps to know other people have been through it and come out okay." Driving home that night, I felt good about what I had done. If my experience could help even one person stand up to an abusive HOA, it had been worth sharing. The whole ordeal with Brenda Hartwell had been stressful and unpleasant, but it had also opened my eyes to issues I had never really thought about before. Property rights, community governance, and the importance of accountability in positions of power all mattered more than I had realized. Life continued to move forward. Spring arrived and Rachel and I planted a garden in our backyard, something we had been talking about for years but never got around to doing. We grew tomatoes, peppers, and various herbs. It was satisfying to watch things grow and thrive under our care, a stark contrast to the destructive behavior Brenda had exhibited. In May, I saw a moving truck at what used to be Brenda's house. The young couple who had bought it were moving out, and I learned they had gotten job transfers to Denver. A new family moved in shortly after, a retired couple from Chicago looking for a quieter pace of life. I introduced myself and welcomed them to the neighborhood, making sure to mention that we had a very reasonable HOA these days. "That is good to hear," the husband said. "We did our research, and we saw that there had been some issues a few years back. But it looked like things had been resolved, so we took a chance." "Things are much better now," I assured him. "The board is focused on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. You should feel right at home here." As summer progressed, the neighborhood held various events, including a 4th of July barbecue and parade. It was well attended, and the atmosphere was genuinely friendly. Kids rode bikes and played in the park. Adults chatted over burgers and hot dogs. It felt like what a community should feel like, supportive and connected rather than suspicious and adversarial. In August, I got an unexpected phone call from Brenda Hartwell's ex-husband. I was surprised to hear from him, and even more surprised by what he wanted to tell me. "Mr. Vaughn, I hope you do not mind me calling. I got your number from the neighborhood directory that I still had. I wanted you to know that Brenda and I are divorced now. The whole situation with the theft and jail time was too much for our marriage to survive." "I am sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. "That must have been difficult." "It was," he admitted, "but it was also necessary. I finally realized that she was not going to change, at least not enough. She still thinks she was justified in what she did, that she was just being a good community steward. She cannot see how wrong it was." "That is unfortunate," I said. "I had hoped that going through the legal process would give her some perspective." "Some people just cannot admit when they are wrong," he said. "Anyway, I wanted to apologize again for what she put you through, and I wanted to thank you for pressing charges. If you had not, she would never have faced any consequences, and she probably would have kept escalating. You probably saved someone else from going through something even worse." After we hung up, I sat quietly for a while, processing what he had told me. It was sad that Brenda had not learned from her experience, but it was not my responsibility to fix her. I had done what I needed to do, and the legal system had worked as it should. Whatever happened to Brenda after that was her own journey. As fall arrived and the leaves began to change color, I found myself reflecting on how much had happened in the 2.5 years since that cold January morning, when I had discovered my snowblower missing. It had been a crash course in standing up for yourself, navigating the legal system, and dealing with unreasonable people. But it had also shown me the strength of community when people come together for the right reasons. One October evening, I was sitting on the front porch with Rachel, watching the sunset and enjoying the cool air. A group of neighborhood kids rode by on their bikes, laughing and racing each other. Cars passed slowly, drivers waving to people working in their yards. It was peaceful and normal, exactly what suburban life should be. "You know what I realized," Rachel said suddenly. "If Brenda had just knocked on our door and asked you to use the snowblower at different times, you probably would have been happy to accommodate her." "Absolutely," I agreed. "I am not unreasonable. If someone had explained that the noise was bothering them, I would have adjusted my schedule. But she never gave me that chance. She just decided to take matters into her own hands. Control freaks never think to just communicate like normal people," Rachel observed. "They go straight to punishment and enforcement." "Well, she got enforced right into a jail cell," I said, which made Rachel chuckle. As darkness fell and we headed inside, I took one last look at the neighborhood. My snowblower was safely stored in the garage, protected by locks and cameras. The HOA was functional and reasonable. My neighbors were friendly and supportive. It had taken a bizarre and criminal incident to get to this point, but we were here now, and it felt good. The rest of that year passed quietly, with no drama and no incidents. Winter arrived, and my snowblower once again proved its worth, clearing our driveway through multiple storms. Each time I used it, I felt a small sense of satisfaction knowing that I had fought for it and won. In December, almost 3 years after the theft, I got a letter in the mail with an Arizona postmark. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single-page note, handwritten on plain paper. "Mr. Vaughn, I know this is unexpected and probably unwelcome, but I felt I needed to write to you. I have been in therapy for over 2 years now, and my therapist suggested I write letters to the people I hurt, whether I send them or not. I decided to send this one because you deserve to know that I finally understand what I did was wrong. Not just against the rules, but genuinely, morally wrong. I violated your home and your trust. I stole from you and many others. I told myself I was helping the community, but really I was just trying to control everything because I felt powerless in other areas of my life. I do not expect your forgiveness, and I am not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that I have changed, or at least I am trying to change. I am no longer that person who thought she could judge everyone else's choices and enforce her own vision of perfection. I hope you and your family are well. Sincerely, Brenda Hartwell. I read the letter twice, trying to gauge how sincere it was. It certainly sounded different from the defiant, entitled woman I had seen in court. People could change, I supposed. Therapy and consequences had apparently made some impact. I showed the letter to Rachel, who read it thoughtfully. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think she probably does feel bad now," I said. "But that does not change what happened. I am glad she is getting help, but I do not feel any need to respond or engage with her." "That seems fair," Rachel said. "You do not owe her anything." I filed the letter away with the other documents from the case. It was a reminder that people were complex, that even someone who had done something terrible could potentially grow and change. But it was also a reminder that forgiveness was not automatic, and that consequences mattered. As we entered a new year, I felt a sense of closure that I had not quite felt before. The whole saga with Brenda Hartwell was truly over now. She was living her life somewhere else, hopefully making better choices. I was living my life here in Meadowbrook Estates, surrounded by good neighbors and a functional community structure. My snowblower was where it belonged, in my garage, ready to serve its purpose. Standing in my driveway on a cold January morning, almost exactly 3 years after the theft, I looked around at the neighborhood. The same houses, the same streets, but a completely different atmosphere. It was proof that change was possible, that problems could be addressed, and that standing up for what was right mattered. One person had tried to control and terrorize a neighborhood, and the community had come together to stop her. Justice had been served, lessons had been learned, and life went on better than before. I fired up the snowblower and began clearing the fresh snow from the driveway. The machine roared to life, powerful and reliable, exactly as it should be. As I worked, neighbors waved from their own driveways, everyone going about their morning routines. No drama, no conflict, just people living their lives. And that, after everything we had been through, was exactly perfect. The snowblower had been stolen, but more importantly, it had been recovered, and justice had prevailed. That was the real victory, and one that would last far longer than any machine ever could.